you can have a story that people can enjoy, and you're not going to deliberately, obfuscate what they have to do in order to make it enjoyable. And so those are two original pieces, and they were composed on the MT32.
That's awesome.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the Retro Rents Retro Gaming Podcast. This is our 56th episode, and I am Al.
I'm Nick.
And with us tonight, we have an amazing special guest. I'm really excited to talk to her. We got the chance to sit down and talk to the great Julia Minamata. I hope I said that properly. The developer, designer, and coder of the Crimson Diamond. Hi, Julia. Thank you for coming on.
Hi, how you guys? Thanks for having me.
Oh, anytime. Thank you. This is a treat for us. We've gotten to talk to a few people, but what makes this really cool is like this. I guess we can start here. I'm jumping around and I apologize, but we heard about Julia and her awesome game at this past PAX East 2020. In case anybody listens to this way in the future. Nick and I were fortunate enough to not only be able to go, obviously before the whole COVID-19 thing happened, but we were also able to attend a panel called What's Next for Adventure Gaming. And that is where, we got to see and hear Julia talk about her game along with several other developers. And I guess we could start there. We'll talk about PAX. What was it like for you to be on a PAX panel? Was it your first?
Yeah, It was my first PAX panel, and it was crazy. It was a crazy experience. It was so exciting. I was pretty nervous starting out talking. While I started to talk more, I started to calm down. Mm-hmm. But I did notice that when we had little cups of water in front of us and stuff. I noticed that even though I felt calm when I picked up the cup of water to take a drink out of it, my hand was shaking. Mm-hmm. Although I felt fine, still I was so like psyched up to do it. So that was a great experience.
Yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I can imagine that being pretty intimidating. I mean, it's full disclosure behind the curtain. It's how I get with any interview on here where I'm talking to them. Like, you get nervous at first, and then it's like, all right, I'm kind of getting into the groove here, talking to people, and I don't think that ever goes away. I think that's a cool thing. But yeah,
a bad thing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd not want to be excited about it, because that kind of sucked too.
Yeah, I mean, that was my first PAX. Nick has gone how many times now?
I've gone several. I think East I've done at least 4 years, but I've kind of jumped around. I've done South. I've done West/Prime. I got to get out to Australia at some point.
Oh, I envy you. But no, it was my first experience. So that was like my first panel that I actually got to like sit in on, and it was just really cool seeing this like who's who of modern adventure game developers. And so obviously Crimson Diamond definitely stuck out to me as somebody who grew up playing a lot of these kinds of adventure games. And Nick, I'll hand this over to you so we can learn more about Julia as a game developer.
Sure. So what was the moment that you realized that you wanted to be a game adventure developer? Like, not only with the Crimson Diamond, but just, I guess, in general.
Well, when I was thinking about this over the week, I realized that there were actually a lot of moments in my life where I wanted to become a game developer, but all the pieces didn't come together until much later. And then that's when it actually started to actually become a reality. I thought about it, and even way back when we had a Commodore VIC-20.
Classic.
Yeah. So we had one of those books of just game code where you could just transcribe code to make the game. And I was probably between like 6 to 8 years old, I would say, with this Commodore 64, trying to transcribe this code, not even knowing what I was trying to write down. Never getting it to work, but just it was such an exciting idea that you could sort of, I wouldn't be making the game, but in a way kind of just generating a game from just a bunch of like a magical spell, kind of like King's Quest 3, which is probably why I didn't like King's Quest 3, is that it kind of had to write everything perfectly for, and the dire consequences should you not get it right. But I do remember that even from like being that young, the idea of making a game was something that was so cool to me. It was just so far out of reach, for at that time. And even as I go through school, I realized that, when I was in high school, I took a couple like computer, I think they were called programming courses. One of them was we did a bit of Java. And I made a triangle in Java, and I don't remember how I did it. And I couldn't, if you just sat me down right now and offered me $1 billion trillion to do it, I could not do that. But and so that type of thing, or we had there's a programming language, at least that is taught in Canada, called Turing, which is it's kind of like a C kind of style of language, and it was developed specifically to help teach kids and teach classes computer programming, the basics, and that was another thing where I was learning a few of these little tools, but there was no idea that you could actually make a game, or anyone had made a game to show us, or this was before YouTube, so you couldn't learn this stuff on your own. You couldn't really necessarily go to the library and take out a book on how to make a computer game. So I had taken these courses because I've always played with computers. My dad was a pretty early adopter of like the Commodore VIC-20, like we had a Tandy, all that type of thing growing up, and I've always been interested in computers, and I've always played computer games, and I've always been interested in learning how to do that, but just the stuff that was available at the time in terms of resources, and like I guess my age too, and just being so busy with other stuff in high school, not really spending the time that I would have liked to necessarily to build anything, that kind of fell by the wayside, kind of in high school and at the end of high school. I decided to go to college for art, for visual art.
Oh.
And so I did illustration in college. And at that time, it was all illustration all the time. And I didn't really go back into thinking about making computer games until sort of two things happened, which I can't remember specifically which one happened before the other one, but they kind of combined to help me decide that I could actually potentially do this. And one of them is I learned about Adventure Game Studio.
Yeah.
And yes, and the way I learned about it is I was watching, there was a YouTuber named Her Crabbiness, and she would show Let's Plays, and she was showing a Let's Play of a point-and-click adventure game that I had never seen before, and I thought I'd seen quite a few of them at that time.
Sure.
And it was something called the Ben Jordan series of games, by Francisco Gonzalez.
Huh.
And yeah, I don't know if you're familiar with him and his work.
Oh, I know his work. I'm hooked on Lamplight City at the moment as well.
Oh, it's fantastic. Yeah, it's fantastic. He's come such a long way from like the stuff that I remember him doing even 10 years ago or something. So when I saw that, I learned about this tool, I thought this is really cool. This is something that's purpose built for adventure games. It's not like I'm trying to use Java or something to make an adventure game. And I thought that was cool, and I kind of filed it away in my head. And then the other part that kind of excited me and kind of got me thinking that this is something that actually is within my reach finally was I learned how to make pixel art in Photoshop.
Oh.
Yeah, so because I'm an illustrator, freelance illustrator by trade, I learned how I use Photoshop all the time, every day of my life for like 15, 20 years by now, I suppose. And sadly / a good thing is that I've been using the same CS2 ever since college. I just never upgraded it. But it's fine. It does what I need. And it
works.
It does work. And it did more than, even at that time than I realized, because it had this ability to do pixel art that I had never even thought about. I just so happened to read an online article about the pencil tool, the non-anti-aliased pencil tool. And so the first thing I did was I started to try to make some adventure game portraits and some rooms and things, and based on the art that I liked the most, which was a lot of the Sierra stuff.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, by that time, YouTube had been invented, which was nice, super helpful. And I saw an adventure game studio tutorial, a set of tutorials where someone, Lensming, led you step by step through how to just use the basic stuff of Adventure Game Studio. And that's kind of where it all started. It was just sort of a confluence of I kind of have more time to play with it. There are tools that have developed that make it easier to build games.
Hmm.
And there are resources available now where I can see people who've made games in this thing and I can see how to do it. It's I mean, not that it was impossible before, but it just became, this level of accessibility that I felt like was something that what I could do. And so that's kind of how that started.
Yeah, it really is an interesting time of like a perfect storm of different
Hmm.
technologies. Even like, not to like flip it around and make it about myself, but like wanting to do a podcast, it's like I didn't know where
Hmm.
to start.
Oh
But
yeah, yeah, yeah.
but you have the resources now to like go and look on YouTube for a tutorial.
Mhm.
And I actually know the Adventure Game Studio tutorials you were talking about because I tried going through them. I'm a writer when my kids sleep, when I can
Hmm.
actually find the time, and I always wanted to try to make a game, but I just have zero, like probably negative artistic talent in the visual sense, and it's one of my favorite things about Crimson Diamond. Like I've always felt, the jump we made from EGA to VGA, that like people kind of look back on EGA like, it looks so much better, and it's like there is some serious art in EGA pixel art, and your game is a really great example of that. And right before we jump into that, you did mention having played a lot of, adventure games in the past. And were there any particulars that were your favorites? I know you had mentioned, the Sierra art and stuff, but that really helped shape the kind of game you wanted to make?
Yeah, yeah. So, yeah, that was my primary influence and stuff I looked at first. The Colonel's Bequest from
Mm-hmm.
Sierra, 1989. That was for me the pinnacle of EGA art, especially SCI Sierra games,
Yeah.
which are sort of the more advanced pixel by pixel type of art that they were doing at the time. And it was, yeah, it was what I looked at. It was the rooms that they had. The rooms were, rooms in a house. I mean, I started to make rooms in a house. That's
Right.
exactly where it all got started. And not only for me, not only was it the art in that game, but it was also the way it was designed. It was designed differently from the stuff that had come before. Uh, what I mean by that is that it was actually more story based. You could kind of stumble through and
Mm-hmm.
not really know what is going on, and the puzzles were not like really, really, really hard puzzles. You could get an ending that wasn't, falling off a cliff, like a real ending, like a
Yeah.
story conclusion without knowing what was going on. And for me, it was a really cool lesson in what an adventure game it could potentially be, as opposed to what it had been.
Right.
And that's what I think the lesson is I've taken a lot from the Colonel's Bequest is the idea that you can have a story that people can enjoy, and you're not going to deliberately, obfuscate what they have to do in order to make it enjoyable, because it wasn't at the time to do that to people. And nowadays people are just not going to they're not going to do it. They don't
Yeah.
have the patience, and we have the internet, and they're not going to need to anyway. um, another series of games that for me were kind of inspirational in the development is the Quest for Glory series.
Ah, that's my favorite.
Yes, yeah. So the first two, Quest for Glory 1, Quest for Glory 2, again, gorgeous, right? Gorgeous
Yeah.
EGA graphics, my absolute favorite thing. Text parser games too, which is a whole other thing I'm sure we'll talk about later. Um, but not only that was their day and night cycle. This
Yes.
idea that, you could visit the same locations at different times of day and they would feel different, they would look different, different things were happening. And I loved that. And in the Colonel's Bequest, it all happens over one night, and there's no real sense of time passing besides, the clock ticking, getting a little later into the night. But the graphics didn't really change in that one. But I loved that part of Quest for Glory,
Yeah.
and so that's why I did it in the Crimson Diamond. So you'll see that in the demo, that is free available on Steam right now to
Yep.
download and try. So please do, anyone
And
who's
definitely
listening.
do.
uh, yeah, so that one that happens when you at nighttime. But after the demo and the actual full game, the next part that you'll see is the daytime. So you actually get to see the light through the windows changes
Oh, I can't wait.
actually in the lodge. So you'll get to see that, and then the other parts of the game you'll actually get to explore outside of the lodge too. And people go to bed at night. You'll see that in the demo. Some people go to bed at different times, and you can't talk to them anymore. I really wanted the feeling of a place and a setting where there were people that were kind of doing their own thing.
I,
And lastly, well, actually, not even lastly. I'm so sorry. I've prepped.
no, go
I
ahead, please.
prepped a lot. Um, and I know. Okay, so yeah, this is inside baseball or whatever. But you did give me a list of questions, and you asked me if I if I wanted to add anything, and I
We
didn't.
break
So
through that fourth wall all the time.
I felt like, okay, I didn't add any questions to this, so I felt like I had to expand on the ones you did
Sure.
give me. Okay, good. So another thing is that the LucasArts more style of game design with Day of the Tentacle and Secret of Monkey Island,
Hmm.
the idea that you're not going to have dead man walking syndrome where you're going to be stuck in no win situations. I didn't want that either.
Yeah.
And and the funny thing is, although I admired and respected the Sierra games, I actually enjoyed playing the LucasArts games more when I was a kid. So I was
Yeah.
looking at those games, and I decided I wanted to make it more sort of a more I don't know if I want to say enjoyable, but for me enjoyable experience, like the kind of
I would
game I
say
would want
less
to play.
frustrating.
Yes, yes, by a long shot, less frustrating. And finally, with this question about adventure games that helped shape the kind of game I wanted to make, I'm going to so the PAX East panel
Hmm?
had Francisco Gonzalez from Grindeslav Games, who made Lamplight City, who made A Golden Wake, in Adventure Game Studio. Dave Gilbert was also on the panel, and
Yep.
he's of course the head of Wadjet Games, and he's just with Unavowed and the Blackwell Games, also made an Adventure Game Studio.
Wow.
Um, those guys were huge inspirations for me. Also, Yahtzee Croshaw, he made some games in Adventure Game Studio called the Chizo Mythos.
Hmm.
One of them is actually a text parser game, too. I think Trilby's Notes is the text parser, one of those. Uh, and so for me, it's amazing for me to see all these games that are really good games made by people. And now I know these people and I've met them and I've talked to them. And this kind of can-do spirit
Yeah.
to make a game kind of with either a small team or completely by yourself. That for me has been probably the biggest inspiration in making the Crimson Diamond. Is just knowing people who have gone before, seeing that it can be done. Even in the '90s with Hugo's House of Horrors and those shareware games,
Oh yeah.
David P. Gray, he made those games, and that was before the tools became more accessible.
I
The
didn't realize that was
idea
a solo effort. Oh wow.
Yeah. Yeah,
Wow.
well, I mean, some of the stuff, like some of the art you'll see is like strangely better or worse. And some of that stuff is like clip art he bought, I was told, and then incorporated into his game. And then the later games, he actually hired an artist. But the first one, he either did the art himself or like the first shot, the haunted house, is a piece that he didn't do. I think it was a piece of clip art, EGA clip art. Like who would have known that existed at those times? But this idea that you don't have to wait for permission or approval to make a game.
Yeah.
You can just do it. And the thing is you were a little surprised to hear that. Yeah, I'm an illustrator first. A lot of solo indie game devs are programmers first, and like the art is something that they have to develop over years and get and improve upon. For me, I came upon it in a different direction where the art is most well developed, and then for me, it was that idea that I'm not really a programmer, and the idea that I'd have to learn pretty much from the ground up.
Right.
But it's that same spirit of just diving in and not waiting to say, well, I'm not a good enough artist to make a game, or I'm not a good enough programmer to make a game. The idea that you're learning along the way, I felt like that gave me a lot of motivation too.
That is really inspiring. Just again, as somebody who likes to tell stories, I've always kind of held myself back with the art. Now it's like, you know what? I may just give it a try. Because
Exactly.
I think it's the most beautiful part about the time that we live in right now. Like you said, the can-do spirit,
Mm-hmm.
I think was one of my favorite things about the panel. I
Mm-hmm.
think in our industry at times there's some people, they'll feel like there's like a need to be competitive. Like I have to, others have to do less better than me for me to win and do,
Right.
to me to do what I need to do, or whatever. And I
Mm-hmm.
love that, especially with adventure games and adventure game creators, it's such a shared passion. Like
It is.
it's something that you not only love to create, but the people that love to play adventure games love to play adventure games. And
Yeah.
it's awesome to see how much it has grown. I think one of my favorite points made on the panel when we were there, I think it was Francisco who said it. or it might have been somebody else, but it's stuck with me ever since. And people like to compare these newer games, like, oh, it's just like Monkey Island, and it's like, no, compare these to like the tons of adventure games that have come out since 2000 that are great and have developed on the formula and helped it grow. So, and yeah, I mean, it's just a really cool time to be a part of, because we're getting games like the Crimson Diamond. Oh my god! Like, I don't get to obsess over games, as much as I would like, to where it's like, all right, I love this game. I want to like know all about it. I can't wait to play it. And your demo is such a teaser.
Yes. Oh, good. I love to hear it. I totally agree with you about the community aspect of it. I was talking to Dave and Francisco, and they've been so helpful with this bits of code or suggestions and giving feedback and everything. And I've been completely blown away. Even the online community with Adventure Game Studio, and that's another aspect that has helped me a lot along the way. Is that I am still learning as a programmer. I think I have kind of all the tools I need now to finish the game. But there have been times when I've been completely stuck, and I've posted in the Adventure Game Studio of the forums and I needed help, and I'd get like several suggestions on ways to proceed with a problem. And it's really vibrant. It's a very vibrant, cool, active community. So it's amazing. And people I meet, talk to, you've got this common ground, and you've got this immediate level of comfort with them for whatever reason. I don't actually know why. I feel like we all have the same childhood almost, and it's weird to think about, but I mean, people all over the world have had that similar type of experience, and it's nice. It's a nice feeling.
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head, though. Like, the second you mentioned Quest for Glory, I still play that series like once every other year. And even the aspects that you mentioned were some of your favorites, like the day-night cycle. I remember, like, something like that just pulled me in immediately. It made it so immersive, and I was like, I have to know everything about this world. And it's just, man, you instantly have a bond with people that have grown up playing these games and love these games, like an understanding that you don't quite have with people who haven't gone through this and played these and love these games. I mean, obviously you can bond with anybody, and it's not like an exclusive club, but it's just a very special thing to share with people.
The great thing about when we're living now is with all these online communities, and growing up, maybe you had a friend or two who liked them, but then for the most part, at least in my experience, most people had no idea what this stuff was. But now, as we have the internet, and we have Facebook, we have all these groups, you can kind of meet up with these people, and you can share this experience that we have, and that's been tremendously helpful too. And really, it's been great to find that community too.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, so let's talk about the Crimson Diamond. I have questions. One of the things that immediately stood out to me and drew me right in was the setting. A lot of modern day adventure games, because people write what they know, take place in the U.S. And I love that this takes place in Ontario, Canada, which I know very little about.
Yes, it's a sense of mystery that actually gets a lot of people interested in the game to know that the setting is Canada, the turn of the century Canada. I have kind of an interest in local history. I like going to little local museums and taking a look, because I feel like they kind of are kind of more intimate than I love big museums too. But
sure,
when you go to a local museum, you can see like artifacts from when the town was built and founded, and you really feel like I'm in this place. Like it's about that place. Like with a bigger museum, it's stuff from all over the world, right? Which is awesome too. But a local museum, you're here, you're standing in the same place where that history happened.
Yeah, and pictures of the people that built it, or people looking at you, and
I find that really compelling. And the local history is also just, a lot of places don't make it. Like a lot of towns, and you're not going to know their names, and that's kind of the point, right? It's like they don't make it, they don't succeed. People leave for whatever reason. There's so many reasons these places don't end up succeeding. And just to see the local museum, it is like a success story. Like maybe sometimes against all odds, this place is still here, and still with people living there, and there's this museum, and so that kind of was the start of the setting, actually. Although the game did start just as an art project for me, it didn't start as that story part. That kind of came after. I started to build this lodge, just a series of rooms, really. So when I mentioned earlier that when I learned how to make pixel art, I started making rooms, like the Colonel's Bequest had rooms. So I started making rooms, and I started connecting them up, and it became a house. And then that's when I started thinking about, no, why would this house be here? Who would live in this
Right.
house? And so it started that way. And then I started to, do more research about towns and ghost towns. And because I knew that I didn't want it to be about a whole town. I wanted it to just be centered on one place in a remote location, which is, that whole mystery trope of just that one central location that everyone kind of gets involved with. So from practical consideration, I knew that, and I knew that I wanted Crimson Ontario to be a ghost town. So I found a book about Ontario, specifically Ontario ghost towns, and you get all these little histories about, why did people go there, and why did they leave, or what got built and what got built first. And that's why it's set in that era, that it's set in 1914, because that's sort of a bit after a lot of that, like, frontier expanding settling happened
Right.
in Canada. So that's one of the reasons. I also just like that era too. I'm a fan of sort of Art Nouveau,
Hmm.
and then into Art Deco. I love that stuff too. So just being able to sort of scratch that, like, interior decoration itch, because it's kind of like a dollhouse at the same time of,
Yeah.
being a mystery house. I really enjoyed furnishing and putting rugs in, and putting, little figurines and paintings and stuff. So that kind of also sort of dictated a lot of things, kind of came together. And then when I step back and look at what I have so far, it kind of all holds together and makes sense to me. So I think it means I'm kind of going in the right direction.
I would agree. I mean, the house is very. It feels very real. Like I always. I love when a game like this you can use EGA graphics and it's like I feel like I'm still walking around in here. Like I could walk into this house today. Like it feels like it exists. Um, and it feels like very lived in. Like I just love the different environments. Like for whatever reason, the kitchen. I loved
Yeah.
going in the kitchen and just everything that was in there, that was like to the period of time that it takes place in, and it's another part of it that immediately drew me in, and it's I guess it's really cool, like now understanding that you started this as an illustration exercise, because the graphics are amazing. I mean, for like, and you're doing all that yourself, right? You're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yeah, like
Um,
no, please go ahead. I'm sorry.
oh, no, no. I was just going to mention that the kitchen was the first room I ever did.
Oh, really?
Um, yeah, it was. Well, it was. Yeah, there was the first one. I did one that. Uh, I did a first preliminary room, but the problem with that room is I didn't have like a little sprite to go with it, so everything was completely out of scale.
Right.
But the kitchen was the first room that I had. So I built a little Nancy Maple sprite, and I put her up against the counters and the tabletops and made sure that, she's pretty small, actually. She's a bit smaller than she probably should be, but just to make sure that the cabinets were the right, were reachable for her and all that. So the kitchen is the first room that is in the game that I actually did create. But yeah, it started as just art. It started because I never thought that I'd start making a room, a game. But
Right.
when like I said, the lodge started to gel, and I made this little sprite because I wanted to make sure that everything was in proportion with everything else in scale. And then I wanted her to walk around in the rooms, so I did a little walk cycle. And then I wanted her to be able to move from room to room. And then so I started to, that's when I started to look at the Adventure Game Studio tutorials, and sort of started knitting the house together. And then, yeah, when the house started to become real, and I started thinking about characters, I realized, well, I'm going to need more bedrooms because I have this many characters and they're all going to need to sleep. And I need another bathroom because you can't just have one bathroom in this huge house. And so those were considerations I made just as like a hobby project
Uh
idea.
huh.
I didn't make all those bathrooms because I thought that there's a game reason for this to be here. I made it because it was a house. There was a house
The house
practical reason for
Yeah.
it to be there, and there's so much code, and there's so much art and assets that are all tied up in things that I had made without thinking about efficiency, without thinking about, well, is this going to actually be involved directly in the game? Because it didn't start that way. That's why there's so many cupboards and closets and drawers. It's because I just liked making the furniture. And then when it was there, I wanted to be able to open it, because there's nothing more frustrating in an adventure game than a closet or a drawer that you cannot open. So
It
I
gives
made
me
it
a
all,
twitch. It makes the eye twitch.
Exactly. I will say though that I can understand some people have an issue with the fact that so many things are empty right now in those rooms. But I will say that if I have time and if I remember, I do want to go back and backfill those things, those pieces of furniture with things, and maybe they're not puzzle items, but they could be flavor items and stuff like that.
And to follow up on that, like, is that kind of your flow process for putting this all together in terms of like, kind of like one thing leads to another and you're just kind of like, oh, and now I need this because I had this other thing in another room?
Well, that's definitely where the bulk of it happened. That's definitely how it started. But now, as I've come to this point where, I've told myself I want to focus on this and actually finish it. I'm trying not. I'm not doing that as much as the beginning, because at the beginning, it was it was like a train set, or something you keep in your garage. You kind of you tinker with it, you put it away for months, you come back to it. That's how it started. It started like that, like literally just like a hobby thing I was doing on the side. But when with the illustration, it started to really slow down. There was like the recession in 2008. And like editorial, I'm an editorial illustrator, which is newspapers and magazines, and those are always having there's always been a decline, for ages now, and I don't think things are going to get much better, which sucks, because it was like my love. I love to do that, but I understand that it's just the industry is changing. So just having more time to work on it, I thought, okay, well, I started to pour more and more time into it, and then what happened in 2018 is. I submitted it to a show in Toronto here called Wordplay. And Wordplay is like a narrative game festival thing that they hold at the Toronto Reference Library downtown. And I thought, you know what, I'm going to submit this and just see, what people like it and stuff. And so I did, and it was a showcase of, I think, 25 games, I think. I don't know how many submissions they got, but I was surprised that I got in. I got accepted. When I got accepted, I thought, oh no, because it was just kind of all over the place. It was like, pieces here and there, stuff that, I'd go wander off on a tangent to develop something, and then, just bits. It was all over the place. And then when I got into the show, I had maybe a couple weeks to make it some presentable to other people. So that kind of lit a fire under me, because I had to approach it from a different perspective. I had to stop, tinkering, and I actually had a goal where I needed to show this to people, and I think I had 2 weeks to show it. So just to get a demo that was playable, like a slice of the game, to show people. Although a lot of that work had been done already, just willy-nilly, but just having to be directed toward that. That really focused me, and so I started to think about it in that way. And I showed it there. I had a great time showing it there. Watching people play it was definitely an educational experience, and I learned a lot about what I needed to fix, and just weird perspective things I hadn't thought about, where that the way you control a Sierra character on screen. Right. You tap the arrow key once, and you tap it again to stop them. Right. That's natural to us, maybe.
It's the first thing I did.
And well, you probably didn't work for you, because the default is not that. Did you know you could change it though in the main menu? Did you know you could change it?
I did not know that. Because I'm sitting there going, wait, oh, all right, I gotta hold it. Got
it. Yeah, because the default was the old Sierra way. And when I showed it at Wordplay, but I quickly realized that, hey, you know what? Like 99.9% of people have never controlled a character on screen like this before.
That's fascinating.
So I changed it. I changed it to press and hold, because I saw everyone was doing it, and like Nancy was like stutter stepping her way across the screen. I'm like, this is clearly unacceptable. I'm going to have to make it easier for people that have experience with other games to play it. But there is an option in the main menu to do tap to walk.
That's
Sorry,
funny.
you're learning about it now, but like, for the future, it's
No,
something to use
I
in.
loved like I was it was one of those like it was a few seconds and I was just like wow that was my like I even caught myself I'm like yeah okay it's not Sierra duh just go with it and it was just
It's
cool.
there. Yeah, it's just, yeah, like I said, it was how I started. When I started showing it in places, I realized that, yeah, I mean, what I had taken to be the complete standard of how to move a character around is like 30 years old, and no one is
Yeah,
doing it that way anymore. But it's there. I promise it's there
well, I'm
for
sure.
people who remember that way. But yeah, so I showed it there, and then in March of like just last, oh my gosh, it's just last year, like March, April, I entered it into something called the Ubisoft Toronto Indie Series.
Oh wow.
And that was for Toronto developers of like small studios. And it's funny because when I was doing the application, I saw and they said, I think their definition of a small studio is like less than 50 people.
Right.
So I'm like, okay, well, whatever. I'm going to apply to this, and it's going to be, whatever. I'm not going to get it, not going to get in, but it's going to be a good experience to apply to something. And I'm in Toronto, whatever. But then I got in, right? There were 10 finalists, and we had to pitch it to a panel of Ubisoft people, like
Oh my
creatives,
god.
and yeah, and it was my first experience like pitching anything. We had half an hour to pitch to people. And I thought, oh my gosh, okay, well, now I'm going to have to think about this game in another way. And that way is like a more business way. Like, can I actually make money off of this thing?
Yeah.
And what's good about it, because it's just me, is that actually it's hopefully not going to be too difficult to do that, because it's just me. Well, it's me and Dan, but I've got a musician helping me with the music. But besides that, just to think about it that way, and that kind of made me look at other people who had made games like this, and I thought, this is a possibility. But the takeaway of that anyway was that I decided that I was going to try to focus on developing the game full time.
Mm-hmm.
From Well, between November and March, April, I kind of came to that decision. When I pitched it to Ubisoft, I'm like, okay, I'm getting like a good reaction out of
Yeah.
it. So I'm gonna just live off my savings, and I'm gonna just focus on this, and then just try to finish it, and then see what happens. Because I had been working on it on and off for maybe like 10 years, actually.
Oh
Um,
wow.
yeah, and so I thought, well, it's never gonna get done this way. My other career is kind of stalling anyway, so why don't I just, I hate the word. I don't know why I hate the word, but pivot. I'm gonna pivot to something else, and see where it takes me. And I gotta say that it's taken me some really interesting places, including PAX East, at a panel where I'm speaking to like a room full of people for the first time about it. Um, but yeah, showing it has been super educational, and showing it has, it sort of reinforced this notion of setting Crimson Diamond. I don't know how we got here, but my
That's
problem is
fine.
I have to bring it back to that, because I do have more to that response. So I'm so sorry. We're gonna like
No, no.
go in reverse and come back to what inspired the setting for the Crimson Diamond. So we talked about the house specifically, but actually, what also outside of the house, like why is it Northern Ontario, specifically Northern Ontario? Well, one of the reasons was that it's a lodge, and I wanted it to be in a remote area, because there's nothing more, more fun than having a mystery story in a remote area where people,
Absolutely.
you can't have help outside, and it's all up to you, or it's all up to the people that are there. But the other reason is because apart from local history, I'm interested in mineralogy and geology. And so Nancy
Ah.
Maple is a rookie mineralogist, and she wants to go to school for this. And I knew that I wanted the story to kind of be focusing around some kind of mineral or something. And I decided diamond is kind of like the gold standard, like
Yeah.
diamond gold standard, however that works. But yeah, it's sort of the most exciting type of a spectacular find that there could be. And having done research about the geology of the Canadian Shield, which is like the rock formations that are like underneath
Uh-huh.
Canada, and just the age of them, and like the kind of rock that we have around here, where could there potentially be, diamond mines? And I knew that northern, Canada, not specifically Ontario, but we do have mines in northern Canada that are diamond mines that are in
Oh wow.
operation. And then I later found out that there happens to be a diamond mine in northern Ontario called the Victor Diamond Mine, and it's run by De Beers, and it actually is very similar to like the area I had envisioned the Crimson Diamond to be.
Oh, that's great.
So that's another reason why it's in northern Ontario, is because geologically, it wouldn't be surprising to find diamonds there because there's been an open diamond mine there since 2000, so sometime like the 1990s to 2000, like fairly recently, has been developed. So it's there. So it would have been there in Nancy's time too. Although probably there's some probably really good reasons why they never ended up mining there. Maybe for technological reasons, or maybe because they had better diamonds elsewhere. But they are there. So it's a true thing geologically.
That's awesome. Like again, like I'm one of those people. Like I would start wikiing something like that and going down the rabbit hole of like, oh wow, this just adds to this game's already like rich research that you've put into it. And again, just that immersive factor of this is just another step deeper into what makes it kind of a living, breathing, feeling real place and time. That's awesome.
So let's see, I'm looking at my notes, and I wrote that Victor Diamond Mine was discovered in 1995. So 1995 is when and it's still in operation. Yeah.
I just think it's cool that in this modern day and age, where you, I think everybody, myself included at times, you have this like misconception that we found everything and like we know where everything is, and it's like, hey, we're still finding diamond mines.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And then this kind of segues into the next question about the research that I've done in the Crimson Diamond. Because I read this amazing New Yorker article about this a Canadian lady geologist who happens to have red hair, and she wears it in a bob, and she discovered and opened diamond mines in the Northwest Territories in 1994.
Oh wow!
She's called the Queen of Diamonds in the industry. And so she has been a huge influence in the development of mines all over the world, not just in Canada. And some of the stuff they're finding is just spectacular. They found this incredibly huge diamond, and I think it was in Africa, that's the size of like, I don't know, like a softball or bigger.
Oh wow!
So it does happen. So I what I'd like to do is I have something called the Crimson Diamond Gazette that I run mid-month every month. I'll put it out. Ooh. And what it will have is it has sort of podcasts that I'm on, so you guys are going to be on the next one. I'll write about a little bit about the development sometimes, or like I'll write about PAX East, which was just the past Gazette issue, and I'll also put like a little rock fact, or a little piece of trivia that's interesting pertaining to the game. And so if you go to there's a dev blog on my site. And for the March issue, there is a link to the New Yorker article about Ira Thomas, this lady geologist. And it's a fascinating article, and it tells you all about how they're using different techniques to find these things that hadn't been found before. And spectacular finds, not even just like, oh, this is kind of barely viable as a mine, like really spectacular stuff. So that's been stuff where I read it and I'm like, oh, this seems a lot this is a lot like what I've already done. And there's nothing that will make something more believable than if it's already happened.
Yeah, like that to me, again, like it's one of those things, like I like to dig into a game that I get into, and like the more based in reality it is, and yet the more it is as a fun game, like it immediately can draw me in. And I think that's what it's a big appeal with this for me so far, is just you could tell that you've really done the homework and like the material. But the best part, and this will kind of segue into the next question, is you know how to treat the average gamer like me who knows nothing about mineralogy and stuff like that, and yet I could pick this up and understand what's going on, and get a good feel for the terminology and stuff. Like I remember playing one of the police quests, and it was like, thank God they had a book that came with it, because like man, I would have never figured half that stuff out. Mm-hmm. And but one of the things that and you mentioned earlier, watching other people play it, and the things that you changed to make it more accessible to people that didn't grow up playing Sierra games. You made quite a few improvements to the text parser interface and what we're used to as for these kinds of adventure games. And I was wondering if you'd like to share some of the improvements that you made to kind of lower that learning curve of text parser games in the past.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's been a real process to make it easier to use, and the only way that it can really improve is by watching other people play it, which is another reason Let's Plays, watching people do Let's Plays of the Crimson Diamond, it's been so invaluable. It's been so educational. And what I do is I've got a YouTube channel. It's I guess you would look up Julie Minamata or the Crimson Diamond or something. What I do is I try to I have a playlist of some of the Let's Plays, and what you get to see is it's like live play testing. And when for when we can't go out to do shows and things like that, I can see people play it. I can see where they get stuck. I can see what I can make easier. And one of those things, is the text parser interface. And something really recent that happened actually is a couple of guys called the Gaming Corner. They did like a 4-part Let's Play of the demo. Wow. And what I saw is, and I've seen this before, but I did see them do this quite a bit, is when they were going to ask someone a question, they would type "ask about Lodge" or "ask about Crimson," and they wouldn't put the person's name. Like they wouldn't say "ask Jack about Crimson" or "ask Jack about Lodge." And I decided after watching them play this thing for 4 parts is, you know what, I'm actually going to make the functionality so that if you say "ask about Crimson," it'll ask everyone that's in the room about Crimson if they have something to say about it, or I think I've even put like "ask people about" or talk people. Stuff that I don't know if it's stuff that's happened in other text parser games before. Maybe it has, maybe it hasn't. But just there's no reason why I can't try to make it as easy as possible for people to play, because I do realize that text parser is not like a usual thing. It hasn't been for like decades.
Yeah.
Although I will say that I think this time that we're in now, people are texting and typing all the time. So why can't there be a game where this is the primary interface? I think it could come back. I'm not going to say I'm banking on it, but I'm really hoping that this familiarity with typing is something that people can come to with this and find it's something that they can actually do. Not to mention, what with like Twine games and something called Adventure On, which is a browser-based game development engine where you can make text parser games. A lot of game design courses in colleges and universities, they'll start people off with doing text-based games. So I'm hoping that this type of increase of literacy in terms of like text parser interface will help people play these games. But just watching people play. So this ask about things, something I did just the past couple of weeks. I've changed that around a little bit. Mm-hmm. There are text parser shortcuts for if you want to do something really quickly, and it's a very common command such as open door. You can use O space D to open the door. C space D will close the door. If you type help into the text parser or H, it'll give you kind of a list of the most common commands for the game.
Yep, first thing I do.
Yep. Oh, you do. So did you read the manual?
No, I didn't. I read the help. I might have started on the manual. I just wanted to. I was like, all right, let me get an idea of the flavor, the
right.
The words I can, the words I can use, and I was like, all right, I'm ready to hit the gas. Let's go.
Yeah, you're experienced. I mean, I know that the manual will not get read very much, but that's why I have sort of when you start the game, there is a tutorial room, and then there are some prompts to help people who I know will have not read anything or have done the tutorial. I try to just keep reinforcing how to play the game, because it's completely for a lot of people completely new. There's the text shortcuts, the tutorial room, which is something I developed after Wordplay in 2018, just to give a step-by-step of the most common commands and how to use them, because it's a style that people are not used to who have never played this type of game, and most people won't have.
And I think that's a really great thing to do, because again, a lot of games, even modern games today, like people are used to that initial tutorial section, that in some way, shape, or form leads you to walk, through an exercise showing you what you're able to do, in this game, no matter what it is. I mean, like Zelda's becoming notorious for them anymore. But I love that because, for people that have not experienced this kind of interface, it's not an obvious thing. It's a whole new way to experience and play a game. But kind of going back to what you were saying about, the possibility of this taking off with people being more, literate in using text and texting and that kind of thing. I think another thing that really plays to the benefit of text parsers, and it might sound weird, but like this tendency and taste that people like open world games, right? I think with text parsers, it's kind of a certain layer of that where it's like, I'm not restricted to just A button jumps and B buttons, does an action or whatever. Like, I have to say what I want to do. And that was always the appeal to me, even way back in the day with text parser games, as I was playing them as they came out, was it's like, how do, I can interact with this world in really interesting ways. And I do remember people lamenting, like, the original Quest for Glory VGA remake, it's like, oh, we lost that whole layer. You have like just the 5 or 6 actions that you can do, and I mean, you could eventually drive the whole game using the mouse, but it was just, there is a layer there, I think, that offers a freedom, if anything, just a freedom of the imagination that you don't get with a lot of games, and I could see that being really appealing today.
Yeah, I have to say that I feel the same way as you, because like I mentioned with Yahtzee's Chisome Mythos games, like most of those are point-and-click games. He did one text parser game called Trailblaze Notes, and that was the game I liked the most. And it's the one that immersed me the most, and it gave me that feeling of possibility and like this, as you say, this open world that, of course it's not. Of course you can't do anything, but that illusion of you can do anything is like that magic, right?
Yeah.
And it's not only that, but it, for me, also with the dialogue of a game.
Yeah.
With the text parser, especially if you're having to ask people questions, like if it was a mystery game, for me anyway, that text parser, it's sort of the way you ask people questions, and you don't get like a menu of things to ask them. You're not just checking stuff off, and it's not a rote procedure that you're going through. You actually have to listen to what people say to come up with what you want to ask them. And to me, that kind of is more like real life. Because sometimes I feel in real life is if only we knew what to say to somebody at the time. Like if we could say that word or just ask that question at this time, whatever, like all these situations, like how far could we get if we could get a hold of those things?
Oh, it would make my job so much easier.
Yeah, well, exactly. Like every time I'm on the phone and you want to get a bit off your cable bill or something. Like what can I say to get the best outcome for me? You don't get like a list of things that you can just try and go back and try. It's you get that shot, you get to ask somebody a question, and then that's it. And even with just like conversation, when you're talking, like as we're talking now, that active listening, it's this idea of, in order for us to have a conversation, I have to be listening to what you're saying. You have to be listening to what I'm saying. And then you can ask questions based on, what that is. And I think that's very natural. And it does give that illusion of, I could ask, Margot about whatever. And maybe she knows things. Like maybe she can tell you something that you would be really interested to know that would be relevant if only you need to ask her.
Yeah. I think that's... it's what I love about the fact that, again, you're making a text parser game. It immediately brings me back to that kind of freedom. And you bring up Margot, I think this is the other thing that has really drawn me in, is you have a really cool cast of characters. I'm like, they're all incredibly interesting. It's what's got me going like, God damn, I can't wait to play the rest of this game. Because they're, you have Kimmy, is she an ornithologist? I can't never think of the name. The ornithopter. She likes birds.
She's just a birder. She's like a hobbyist birder.
She's a hobbyist birder. You have Margot Evans, the house owner's girlfriend. Like, and everybody's got this layer, and it comes across as like, it's like a Twin Peaks episode or something. Like, there's like, everybody's showing you this person they are on the outside. And like you said, there's conversation with each of these characters, and every conversation just shows off, this character is this kind of person. And, obviously, Evan's pretty abrasive and just wants this whole thing to be over, and just wants to get through the night or the weekend. And, like, then you have, like, Nessa and Corvus, and it's like, what the hell are these two planning? Like, there's like, a whole thing. And I guess what I would ask, with all these characters, they're all so much more than they appear. At least that's the impression I immediately get. Do you have one that's like a favorite that you're kind of favoring above all the other ones just because they just come off a certain way, and that's your favorite character?
Well, I will say that, first of all, and this is just for anybody listening, is if you want to butter me up, the best way to do it is to say that you like the writing in the game. Absolutely, 100%. Because, with the art, I'm a trained illustrator, so it's like my profession. And so when people say they like the art, I'm really glad to hear it, but I know that I've got this training working for me. With the programming, no one is going to compliment you on the programming. It's only if it doesn't work do people know.
Yeah.
So you're not going to get, you're not going to get a compliment with the programming, however good or bad it might be. But with the writing, like the story and the dialogue, that is another thing that I don't really have any training for. Like I didn't take any creative writing classes at all. And I've never taken any screenwriting class. I've never, any of that stuff. Like I don't have any experience or training. I have less experience and training now with that stuff compared to programming. It's the thing I have the least experience with, actually. So when you say that you like the writing, and when I hear that, it's just the best. It's the best compliment, because I don't have any kind of formal guide that I'm following about how to do that. It's just like instinct for me when I'm writing it. So knowing that I seem to be doing something right in that part of the game, that's absolutely gold for me. So thank you for that. It does mean a lot.
You're welcome. I mean, it's a great game in its own right. On the art and stuff, and not taking anything away from that. The art is fantastic, but what has really drawn me in, the setting, which we already talked about, that immediately pulls you in. Nancy's character, in a way gets to relate to the player. She's an amateur mineralogist. Well, in this kind of sense, we all are as we play this game. But these characters and the setting for this story, like you got a knack. You could tell you have a knack for a damn good story. You've probably watched a lot of good movies, and there's a good story here, and there is some sinister shit going on in the background. I can't wait to find more about. But yeah, there's a lot going on in this demo, and some of it, like there's one I have the question here further along that I had to know more. Obviously, you had talked about it prior, where some adventure games kind of like Dead Man Walking, and there's like certain things you can do, and that's it. And you do have a scene. I don't want to spoil it, but you obviously know where I'm going. There is a scene in there that is very Hitchcockian, if that's even a word. But I would have to ask, was that meant to be kind of an in-joke for just fellow adventure gamers? Or is that actually part of the story, meaning there is even more shit to worry about in this house when you go to bed at night?
I will say that it is more like an in-joke Easter egg than anything actually related to the story. And that was, I created that in that aimless hobbyist phase of development, where I would just spend hours or days or even a week or two making something that had nothing to do with the story or whatever we have here. So yeah, that was completely just there for yucks. Basically.
Oh, that is so funny. I couldn't tell. I was like, is this part of the game? But if this is like the best adventure game in joke ever.
It's a tip of the hat to obviously to Hitchcock. It's a tip of the hat to and one of the games that I've been inspired by, and I try to resist the temptation to add like stuff like that right now, because like as you said, I'm trying to focus on finishing the game.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
occasionally there'll be something where I just can't resist, and I'll stick it in there. If it's only to take me a few days of development, I'll put it in. And there is something that can be done with the crystal decanter in the living room
Oh,
that I added after I saw people trying, they try to have a drink or whatever. And so I
oh yeah,
recommend, if
yeah.
you haven't tried it, to do that. Um,
Yeah. Now that you mentioned having a drink, yep.
yeah, just that
Toast.
got added fairly late because I couldn't resist. And sometimes I can't, but I do I'm trying to keep my eye on the prize right now, and try to, I've got the whole, the story is all plotted out, and
Okay.
the main puzzles and everything are all plotted out. So right now I'm kind of in that, just I'm trying to execute what I've planned right now, but occasionally there are little stops here and there along the way.
Yeah, and for anybody listening that has played adventure games in the past, we all knew them as Easter eggs.
Hmm.
Little things that don't necessarily, uh, have a major impact on the plot, but it's just there, like, hey, you're playing this kind of game, and these are here, and there's some good ones in this demo, for sure.
Oh, and
Sorry, go ahead.
going back to the question, which again we've kind of wandered off the beaten path, about my favorite character, favorite
Uh
house
huh.
guest in the game. Um, I would say that for all the characters, I don't think any of them, I don't dislike any of them. I think for me, when I'm writing them, I always have to keep an eye on, what's motivating them, why they are the way they are.
Right.
And I don't try to have characters that I like are one dimensional. They have, and there's no reason for them to be the way that they are. I mean, even the most unpleasant people, um, you can kind of see where they're coming from,
Sure.
and in some ways. So I will say I like all of them, but I do have a soft spot for Kimmy, um, and that's kind of because, well, first of all, it's kind of she is sort of a bit rooted in my own family history,
Okay.
actually. Because so my great grandmother on my dad's side, she immigrated to Canada, and got married here in Vancouver, and
Mm-hmm.
my grandmother was born in Vancouver in 1913.
Oh wow.
And so there's this really long history of like Japanese people in Canada, and so there would have been Japanese people in Canada even at this time.
That's
And so
awesome.
I wanted to show that, because I know that's part of where I come from.
Mm-hmm.
So that's part of the reason why she's there, and why she is the way she is. And also I do like her because I think that she acts a lot like I would probably actually act if I was in a game like this,
Ah.
which is, I would want to keep to myself. I would want to avoid drama, at every cost. But we all know that adventure game protagonists, they usually aren't successful if they act like that. So that's a great reason why she's not the protagonist, why Nancy is, because I certainly wouldn't be the protagonist either. Um, and it's interesting because Dave Gilbert played a build of the game, and one of the pieces of feedback he had for me was, I don't understand why Nancy doesn't just like stay in her room the whole night and not come out, because it seems like nobody wants her to be there. And if I was her, I would just stay in the room and just mind my own business. I don't understand why she's snooping around. I don't understand why she's, getting in everyone, trying to talk to people and ask people questions. And you know what, he is right. I can't say that he's wrong, because I would be the same way. So when he's confused about that, I totally get it. So I try to, in the next, I don't know if the version that's currently available right now, but I think I made a few slight changes to the writing to sort of give her more of a reason why she's doing what she's doing. But I get it, because that is the normal reaction to that situation. As adventure gamers, we can kind of forget what would realistically be
Right.
the proper reaction to the situation, because you're too busy going through all the cupboards and stuff. Um, but yeah, so Kimmy for me is like that reflection of like not only so my own history, and who I would probably be if I wasn't there.
Oh man, in a gigantic house like that, I would be the weirdo going out of the bedroom going, I have to go explore this place. No, that's really cool. Like you get again, each character has such a cool, unique personality to them, and like the demo again just leaves you wanting to know more about them, especially with the way the demo ends. Like that really, and I don't want to spoil anything, but that really sets it up. Like as soon as it happened, I'm like, crap, here come the credits. Damn it!
Yes, of course.
And I knew it. I knew it was coming, but it's one of those like you've really got it's leading up to. Obviously, there's a lot more going on than Nancy first realizes, and I got it. So yeah, okay. So the demo leaves me wanting a lot more, and I guess you did mention one of the things I was going to ask, just kind of off the cuff. You said that you've got kind of the main plot points and stuff, and I know I would never ask a developer for a release date. I would never do that. But no, so you're feeling like things are pretty far along, and like you have kind of the main stuff figured out as far as where you want to go.
Yeah. So I would say that the demo is what I call it chapter one.
Uh-huh.
I consider it to be chapter one of a game that is 7 chapters long.
Okay.
In development right now, I finished the first 3 sections, the first 3 chapters. I'm developing the 4th right now. So that's kind of where I am in development. So yeah, it's going along well. I mean, ever since ever since November 2018, I've gone from just the demo to being kind of halfway there maybe. So and as I learn, I'm able to do things faster. And one of the things that's great is I've finished a lot of the assets already. So like the house is done for the most part, right? So and then also a lot of the animation is done too. And if it's not done, then sometimes I can recycle little bits here and there. And if I wanted to create something new, I can sort of use that as a starting point. So for me, it's kind of hard to figure out where exactly I am. Like I know where I am in terms of developing the story. I know I'm about halfway finished. But then I'm more than halfway finished when it comes to the assets. But I'm way less than halfway finished when it comes to testing. Because every time I build something, I have to test it, and the more that's there, the more has to get tested, and the more that can go wrong. So it's one of those things where it's impossible for me to predict.
Yeah.
Although the Steam page did demand a release date, just so you could even put the the store page up. So currently, I think the release date says sometime I might say when it's ready.
I was gonna say it says when it's done, which
okay, good.
100% behind.
Okay, because internally, I had to put an actual date, so I did. But as we go through, it's scary how fast the year goes by.
Yeah.
Because it's sort of I would love to get it released by the holidays, but I don't know if that's possible. And the thing is the people have been telling me obviously don't rush to finish it.
Yeah,
just make
don't rush. Take the time you have to take, because what you have is something really cool. It's really special. The writing is very good, and I'm not even saying that knowing that that's a great compliment to drop, but it is very, very good. I think it's going to be one of the games that kind of brings people back to this kind of genre. It's people like a good mystery, people love a good story, and this has that. So I'm excited to hear, that you're able to dedicate the time you need to it, and definitely test. I used to be a software designer. Test.
Oh.
Not anymore.
Yeah, testing.
It's not for. I don't develop anything anymore. but yeah, no, it's awesome to hear. Again, to reiterate to everybody listening, this is pretty much a one-person project, which is amazing. There is. From what you mentioned before, and I'll actually let Nick ask this question because he's very into video game soundtracks and scores. So you want to handle he added it at the end here, but I wanted to make sure we got that out.
Yeah, so you mentioned recording, a little preempting here, but you mentioned recording with your musician or your composer. So
yes.
So you're going to add a score to this game then?
Oh yeah, so actually the demo, you would have heard 2 of his pieces already. If you'd played or seen the demo. So when you launch the game, there's the theme music for the Crimson Diamond. And sort of midway through the demo, there is a dining room scene cutscene, and so the waltz that you hear is also composed by the musician. And so those are two original pieces,
Oh
and
wow,
they were composed on the MT32.
that's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah, and that's what that's what Dan's been kind of involved with. He's really, really keen and deeply involved in getting in that authentic sound that we want. Up to and including running Windows 3.11 and using DOSBox.
Wow.
So okay, so what I'll say is I'll take this opportunity to segue into what Dan and I have planned this coming Tuesday, which
Yeah.
is March the 31st. So March the 31st at 8 p.m. Eastern time on my YouTube channel. Me and Dan are going to be starting a work on a new track for the game. And so what you can see is sort of that development process, and he'll be able to explain exactly, the stuff he's using, how he's using it, what he does to create the music for the game. And what's cool about Dan is, yeah, he's a huge adventure game fan. He
Mm-hmm.
loves all the same ones we love, and he came to PAX East and helped with the panel too.
Oh,
And
cool.
not only that, but Dan, he teaches, he tours, he composes. He's the keyboardist for Sean Paul.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, so up until the COVID thing happened, like he was just in Australia, and he was in Dubai, I think, with Sean Paul. They were doing stadiums with tens of thousands of
Oh
people.
my God, starstruck.
Um, so he is. I'm so lucky that he's like a huge adventure game nerd, and he's like a huge tech nerd. Like he bought like a Roland 32 so he could do this, with the game.
That is so
Um,
cool.
so he's like an incredibly accomplished musician and teacher and all those other things I said. Like he does like online course, like an online course right now. He's teaching on how to compose, I think. Um, so I feel so lucky that he liked what he saw with the project, and he's bringing his level of detail and professionalism to it too. So I will say that March the 31st, so this coming Tuesday,
Yep, I'm
8
writing this
p.m.
down
on my
right now.
YouTube channel, we're going to be live streaming for about maybe an hour or so. Well, he will kind of run through all that stuff. So so Nick, if you're interested at all in game soundtracks or like the
Oh,
tech
yeah,
I was gonna say
absolutely.
aspects.
we will be there.
Oh, awesome.
What time?
Perfect.
What time is that gonna be?
8 p.m. Eastern.
8
Eastern.
p.m.
Okay.
Eastern. Perfect. Yeah, I guarantee you got 2 new listeners now for that one, or 2 new watchers.
Absolutely.
It's gonna be our first live stream, so hopefully we've been doing some testing and everything. Actually, we did like a half hour actually I think it was a 43-minute test stream the other night just to make sure everything was working, and Dan was going through his vast library of MT32 sound effects, and we were trying to
Oh
pick what
man.
we're gonna use or not use. I've set that to unlisted because I wasn't sure if we were going to put it up there, although, if there's enough interest, maybe we will. But that was cool. We just kind of hung out. It's really like a relaxed type of thing. And people want to ask him questions, want to ask me questions, we're going to be up for that. So, yeah.
Oh, that's exciting. I've already got a reminder in my phone.
Yes.
No, that's really cool, and like one of the things, I always like to kind of lift the curtain on is how these things are made, and I love that we've been able to go over that detail, and especially to provide us as fans of the game with a look into the music composition. Is really exciting. So I can't wait to kind of sit and watch that process and be able to at least be a passive part of that. To get to watch and see that take shape. But I think that's all the questions that we had. I do want to make sure that we get this pushed out. People, this is on Steam. It's a demo, so it's absolutely free. Go check it out. I guarantee you the people listening to this will be as hooked on it as I am. And I'm really excited to see, to play the rest of the game, really. Let's be real, I can't wait. That's going to be awesome. But is there anything else you wanted to share with our fellow adventure game fans?
Okay, well, let's see. So for the YouTube channel, if you are not familiar with this type of adventure game then on my YouTube channel, I've got a playlist of people who have kind of played through the game. Some have commentary, some don't have commentary. Some of them are long, some of them are short. Pushing Up Roses did a 5-minute video on it, which was like crazy for me.
That's awesome.
So so if you want to see what the game is like, just to see what it, before you even download or install it, see if that style of game is something you're interested in, and just watching how someone can play it, I think can be very educational too.
Mm-hmm.
So I might recommend, to swing by my, if you just Google, not Google, if you go into the YouTube search bar, hopefully if you just put my name, you should be able to find my channel pretty easily. If you subscribe, you should hopefully get a notification when we do go live with the stream. And it also has the panel on there too. For people who missed the PAX East panel, it's also on there. And my website is thecrimsondiamond.com, which has the dev blog. I have links of all the articles that people have nicely written about the game too, and a bunch of other stuff. So you can definitely check that out if there's anything you want. You can follow me on Twitter. I'm at Julia Minamata, just one word. That is my personal Twitter. If you just want game news, you'll find the link to that Twitter on thecrimsondiamond.com. Because I know for some people, Twitter is a thing. It's way too much stuff. If you only want, just game news, I would recommend to follow the Crimson Diamond of the games Twitter. I mean, if you don't want me retweeting adorable Japanese mascots, then don't follow me at Julia Minamata, because that's pretty much what I do there. As well as just basically trying to share and enjoy other people's projects and stuff like that. That's what I try to do on Twitter. Yeah,
I mean that's one of my favorite things about following all of you, Francisco and I basically, as I was sitting in the crowd with Nick, I'm going on Twitter and following everybody that I'm watching on the panel. Because it's just one of those, you had mentioned earlier, it's these are my people. These are adventure gamers. This is great. And
I feel the same way.
Yeah, and it's if you like adventure games and adventure gaming, highly recommend following, Julia and anyone you watch on that panel, because everyone has opened my eyes to more adventure games and stuff that I didn't know was out there, stuff that I haven't played yet, and there's a ton. It's so great to see that this genre, a lot of people like to say, adventure games have died, or they're not. It's no, they've never been more alive, and there is a ton out there to play and experience. The Crimson 100%. Diamond just being the one that I'm the most excited about.
Thank you.
But yeah, Julia, thank you so much for taking the time. I really do appreciate it. We really appreciate it. Obviously, with everything that's going on right now. It's great to have, even from our end, just a little bit of normal to talk to the people we always want to talk to, and get to learn more about your game, and definitely get a chance to attend that live recording session on Monday.
Tuesday.
Tuesday. Oh. Yeah, I need more sleep.
Thanks for talking, and this was a great conversation, and I thank you for having me.
Anytime. And as you get closer towards finishing the Crimson Diamond, as it takes final shape, we'd love to have you on again and talk more.
Oh, of course.
Awesome. And on that note, this has been episode, I gotta look, oh my god.
56.
56.
I took a note.
She did. This has been episode 56 of the Retro Rents. Everybody, thank you again for listening. And again, big thank you to Julia Minamata for coming on, sharing more about the Crimson Diamond. Please go check this out on Steam. If you have remotely liked any of the games we talked about tonight that we all kind of grew up playing, this is a must-grab. Check it out. Enjoy the demo, and then I have someone else I can commiserate with where we can say, I can't wait for this to come out. I can't wait. But no, again, thank you very much. And until next time, everybody, have fun, play games, be nice to each other, and we will catch you again soon.